Welcome to the Chemistry, Biology and Math Revision Hub. Today we're doing the Pearson Edexcel International A-Level Biology Scientific Article for January 2025, and this is for Unit 5, Question 8. So we begin with the article. The first part says thirsty works. Drinking is essential for life, but if you find plain water too boring, there are many alternative drinks that promise optimal hydration or other benefits. How do they measure up? Asks David Cox. Recently, I have become somewhat obsessed with a new index on my smartwatch that purports to calculate whether I am sufficiently hydrated. The idea is to prompt the wearer to drink enough fluids to avoid dehydration. A watch tracking hydration might sound like a gimmick, but new research suggests there could be lasting health effects to being even mildly dehydrated. One stumbling block I have faced on my hydration mission is that I find plain water, well, plain boring. But these days, there are a myriad other types of fluids available, from sports to energy drinks to coconut water. Then there is my personal favorite, coffee. Aside from taste, are any of these a suitable substitute in terms of both my health and hydration? Do I even need to think this much about my fluid intake? Our notions about what we ought to be drinking are confounded by half-truths and questionable health claims. So here is a guide to modern hydration, cutting through the hype to discover the science about what we really should be drinking and how much. Water is the main constituent of the human body, making up around half of our adult body mass. The body's balance of water intake and output is tightly regulated to keep the concentration of salts and minerals or electrolytes in our blood at a precise level. To prevent dehydration, hormonal and neuromechanisms are activated, stimulating thirst to encourage water intake and increased water reabsorption by the kidneys to decrease water output. The question of whether we are drinking enough for optimal health has been a matter of contention for decades. You may have heard that we should drink 8 glasses of water per day, but this figure turns out to have no scientific basis. The first scientific recommendation for our water requirements came from a rough calculation added to a set of dietary guidelines from the U.S. National Academy of Science in 1945. It was achieved through estimating that the average male diet involved consuming about 2,500 kilocalories of food per day and might require 1 milliliter of water per kilocalorie for digestive purposes, equating to a daily water requirement of 2.5 liters. One problem with this figure is that it arguably overestimates how much water we need to drink, as it doesn't take into account the fluid we ingest from our food, which makes up around 20 to 30% of our intake. Nevertheless, these estimates have stuck, helping to fuel a battered water industry now worth around $240 billion in global sales. In the US, it got marketed that everybody needed 8 glasses of plain water. That made bottled water sales soar, even though water is something that you can get out of a tap for free, says Tamara Hugh Butler at Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. To fully understand how much water is needed by the body each day, last year an international consortium tracked water input and loss in more than 5,500 people by giving them water to drink labeled with an isotope. We found a typical man in their mid-20s in the US or Europe will require around 1.5 to 1.8 liters per day, and a typical woman will require around 1.3 to 1.4 liters, says John Speakman at the University of Aberdeen, UK. These are just averages, so if you're active and out a lot in hot weather, you will need more than 2 liters. Drinking more water than you need above thirst usually isn't a problem, however, as the kidneys quickly adjust to produce more urine. While it is possible to drink such an excess to cause hyponatremia, where kidneys are unable to cope and the sodium content of the blood becomes dangerously diluted, Speakman says that in practice this is rare. Instead, a more pressing problem appears to be the consequences of repeatedly not meeting our daily water needs. The long-term effects of chronic underdehydration haven't been well studied, but new data is starting to emerge. For example, in 2019, a study in mice by Natalia Dmitrieva at the U.S. National Institute of Health and her colleagues showed that long-term suboptimal hydration caused inflammation as well as accelerated age-related degeneration of the heart, kidneys, and central nervous system. It also shortened the animals' lives by around 6 months, equivalent to 15 years in humans. The people who are most likely to experience dehydration probably aren't the ones rushing out to buy the latest hydration drink to hit the shelves: older adults. One study from earlier this year showed that a quarter of over 65s have low intake dehydration due to consuming insufficient fluid each day. This has been linked to a range of common health problems from impaired cognition to urinary tract infections. One of the reasons why older people are more vulnerable to dehydration is linked to the thirst reflex. It has long been known that the sensation of thirst steadily deteriorates as we age. On top of this, some medication can encourage fluid loss, and many older adults actively choose to drink less due to worries about accessing a toilet or incontinence, says Lee Hooper at the University of East Anglia in the UK. Older people also have smaller body water reserves, as body water is found in muscle, which declines with age, she says. They also concentrate urine less, so they lose additional fluid when they go to the toilet, even when they haven't drunk enough. To tackle this, Hooper believes that we need more public health messaging on the importance of staying hydrated with age, as well as better ways of detecting dehydration. One common recommendation has been to check the color of your urine, as the darker the color, the more dehydrated you are. However, given our kidneys are less able to concentrate urine as we age, this test may mistakenly suggest that you are adequately hydrated, says Hooper. Now, Dmitrieva and her colleagues have investigated the impacts in humans of long-term mild dehydration, in which the body's water conservation mechanisms are activated to reduce urine output and blood sodium levels are slightly elevated but still within the normal range. Using data gathered from 11,255 adults over a 30-year period, the research found that those with slightly elevated sodium levels display greater signs of biological aging based on how well their heart, lungs, kidneys, and immune systems were functioning. Detrimental effects of chronic underhydration on long-term health outcomes is a relatively new concept, says Dmitrieva. It seems that insufficient hydration could promote accelerated aging and therefore increase the risk of developing chronic diseases. Other research backs up this view. One 2020 study, for example, found that underhydration in people aged over 50, as measured by elevated blood sodium levels and/or concentration of salts in urine, is associated with obesity and chronic disease. However, it's possible that these biomarkers could be influenced by factors such as diet and ingestion of sugary beverages. Next, we go to thirst quencher. How do you know if you are getting enough fluid? For most people, the first sign that you need to drink is thirst, although this isn't a fail-safe, as the so-called thirst reflex wanes as we get older. Other signs include a dry mouth, tiredness, darker colored urine, and feeling lightheaded. There are two main types of dehydration. One occurs when you lose fluid and electrolytes by sweating, for example during exercise or by vomiting or experiencing diarrhea. The other, known as low intake dehydration, occurs through not drinking enough. In this case, your electrolyte levels stay the same, but there is less fluid, so the concentration of your electrolytes rises across cells, says Lee Hooper at the University of East Anglia in the UK. It means that cells shrink a bit and changes the environment inside them. More research is needed before we have a clear view of the link between mild dehydration and our health. Can drinking more reduce the risk of kidney stones? Asks Huber. Another interesting question about hydration for me is the link to cognition. Does drinking make you more alert? These are things we need to understand more about. Throughout most of human history, people would have replenished fluids by drinking plain water, whereas today an ever-increasing array of different options is available. Earlier this year, actor Florence Pugh spoke for many when she claimed that water is too boring to drink, preferring elderflower Percy, orange juice, and tea. Scientists agree that other options are fine. Our message is that any non-alcoholic fluid is good fluid, and if you want to drink tea, then that's adding fluid into your body, says Ginny Wilson at the University of West London. The same is the case for coffee. There is scant evidence for it acting as a diuretic, and even if it does, that would require consumption of very large amounts. But a visit to the supermarket reveals a vast array of drinks options that claim to give you a boost in other ways, not just hydration. Known in the industry as functional beverages, two main types take up much of the room on the store shelves: energy drinks and sports drinks. Sports drinks are formulated to replace fluids and electrolytes such as sodium, potassium, calcium in the body during and after exercise. Originally developed for athletes, many are now marketed to the general public, though it is questionable whether these drinks offer any notable benefits over water for the average person. Water is more than sufficient for a casual jogger or someone who goes to the gym a couple of times a week, says David Rowlands at Massey University, New Zealand. Most of these sports drinks were designed for high performance. For most people exercising half an hour to an hour, they might lose 1 liter of fluid at the most, which can easily be replaced with 4 cups of water over a couple of hours following exercise. Many sports drinks are isotonic, which means they contain similar concentrations of sugars and salts to blood. However, they are still less effective than water at hydrating the body because the sugars they contain tend to be simple sugars like fructose, glucose, and sucrose, which are rapidly digested and soon they hit the small intestine, creating a higher concentration of sugars in the gut, says Rowland. The problem is that the gut can only absorb so much sugar at a time, he says. The maximum rate seems to be around 1 gram per minute. If there is more sugar than that coming in, the body holds water back, which limits the amount of fluid getting into the body. Then we go to good hydrations. For serious amateur or professional athletes, hypotonic drinks, which still contain some carbohydrates and salt, but a lower concentration than in blood, have been shown in some studies to be the best hydration agents. This is because of the phenomenon called solvent drag, where the steady absorption of carbohydrates and electrolytes through the gut helps draw more water into the bloodstream. Rowland suggests that coconut water could be an alternative as it contains low concentrations of carbohydrates and electrolytes, similar to the formulations of hypotonic sports drinks. Another drink touted for its ability to boost sports performance is beetroot juice, but this isn't to do with hydration. This is more something that serious athletes take because it has a high nitrate content, which improves blood flow to the muscles, says Rowland. There is some suggestion it can improve performance in high-level amateurs. While purchasing sports drinks can be expensive, an effective rehydration drink providing both the fluid and nutrients that the body needs to recover from exercise can be obtained very cheaply: cow's milk. Milk is actually the best recovery drink of all, says Hugh Butler. Everyone's looking for this elusive beverage that does everything, but if you can tolerate milk, it ticks all the boxes because it has protein and carbohydrates and other nutrients. Milk and chocolate milk contain carbohydrates in the form of lactose as well as amino acids to aid muscle synthesis, and both have been shown to assist recovery following exercise. Rowland says that the sheer number of nutrients within milk bind to water, keep sufficient levels of fluid within the body rather than being urinated out. But don't expect this news to dent the rise of the increasingly popular sports drink sector anytime soon. Energy drinks are another fast-growing product worth around $46 billion globally in 2020. Particularly popular among young people, these are formulated to give an instant energy boost through stimulants such as caffeine, guarana, and taurine. Many also contain a high dose of sugar. Red Bull, for example, contains 27 grams of sugar per 250 milliliter can, almost the entire 30 milligrams daily recommended maximum sugar intake for adults in the UK, as well as 80 milligrams of caffeine, which is roughly the same as that in a cup of coffee. However, sugar-free varieties are on the rise. One of the latest is the popular drink Prime Energy, founded by social media stars Logan Paul and Case One, which contains 200 milligrams of caffeine per 355 ml can, sold in the US for 140 milligram per 330 ml can in the UK. While energy drinks may keep you alert in the short term, they are associated with poorer sleep quality and can be problematic for anyone with heart conditions due to the increased risk of palpitations or irregular heart rhythms, which is why these drinks carry warnings for people sensitive to caffeine, and some are restricted to those over the age of 18. Evidence also suggests that sugar energy drinks may have a dehydrating effect as they are hypertonic, meaning they contain a higher concentration of salt and sugar than in blood. Hypertonic drinks actually draw fluid out of the body to aid in digestion, says Roland. Another current trend in the beverage industry is the addition of ingredients such as ginseng, green tea, turmeric, vitamins, and even proteins to drinks, but Hugh Butler is skeptical about the health benefits. A lot of this is just marketing, she says. If you're eating a good diet, there are things that you'll be getting from your food anyway. Where does this all leave me in my mission for better hydration? As a coffee lover, I am particularly pleased to know that it contributes to my daily hydration requirements, and while having a watch with an inbuilt monitor may seem a little excessive, it definitely acts as a useful reminder to consume extra fluids, particularly on busy days when it's easy to go many hours without drinking. As to whether it really makes any difference to my long-term health, I will have to wait and see. Now, I wrote a simple summary about the article. My summary says the article emphasizes the importance of hydration for maintaining overall health, particularly for individuals engaging in physical activity or those exposed to high temperatures where sweating leads to significant water and mineral loss. Insufficient hydration disrupts cellular function, hormonal imbalance, and organ health, while overhydration can cause hyponatremia, leading to dangerously diluted blood and potential cell swelling. Osmoregulation is a key mechanism for maintaining homeostasis by regulating salt and mineral concentration in the blood. This is something I added as a complement to the content in the article. The hypothalamus detects changes in the blood osmolarity and triggers thirst while promoting water reabsorption in the kidneys through the antidiuretic hormone. However, prolonged inadequate hydration was linked to chronic inflammation and aging-related degeneration of organs like the heart as well as the kidneys. This article also addresses dehydration effects, noting that it can result from sweating, vomiting, diarrhea, and insufficient water intake, causing the cells to shrink and impair their internal function. Among older adults, these were identified as particularly vulnerable to dehydration due to the diminished thirst reflex, reduced kidney efficiency in urine concentration, and a decline in muscle mass. Remember this muscle mass? The muscles act as reservoirs for water, so if there is decline, they're going to lose the water reserves in comparison to normal people. So it was mentioned that the common method for detecting dehydration, such as urine color monitoring, are less effective for older individuals due to the kidney's inefficiency in urine concentration. Additionally, prolonged dehydration was linked to cognitive decline, probably due to the neurocell death as the cells shrink. There is emphasis on the need for improved detection and prevention strategies, especially among older people. Rehydration strategies were discussed, with water and functional beverages containing nutrients like sodium, potassium, calcium, proteins, and carbohydrates highlighted as effective recovery options after exercise. These nutrients aid in electrolyte balance, muscle repair, and energy replenishment. For general hydration, hypertonic drinks such as coconut water and nutrient-rich options like cow's milk were recommended. However, sugary and energy drinks were criticized for their hypertonic nature, which can worsen dehydration by retaining water in the gut. Excessive caffeine consumption in energy drinks was also linked to overstimulation and potential cardiac risks. In conclusion, the article emphasizes that hydration needs depend on the individual's activity level and environmental conditions. While functional drinks can be beneficial for athletes, water and natural options like coconut water suffice for general hydration, and the importance of raising awareness and improving hydration monitoring, particularly among older adults, was stressed as critical for preventing long-term health issues associated with dehydration. Because the article focuses on rehydration after exercise, so I wanted to look at what happens to the body during exercise. So there is nervous control of the heart as well as the muscles. They could ask questions about that. There is hormonal control of the heart as well as muscles. There is muscle contraction, so questions about that. Impulse transmission, other synapses, the need for sufficient oxygen and nutrients during exercise, types of muscle fibers and their differences. Consider fast twitch and slow twitch. And again, this is because we are talking about exercise and the changes that occur in the body. Also, during exercise, sweating is going to occur. So sweating and thermoregulation by the skin during exercise. Questions about vasodilation, vasoconstriction, sweating and water loss, the hypothalamus and osmoregulation, ADH and water reabsorption, also the kidneys and their involvement in water reabsorption, oxygen debt during exercise, then what happens at the neuromuscular junction, because during exercise the muscles need to be stimulated and some reactions occur at the neuromuscular junction, respiration and ATP production during exercise, anaerobic respiration, as well as lactate production. So, and how the body deals with lactate. And then after exercise, of course, muscles need to recover. So muscle recovery after exercise through rehydration. What is the significance of carbohydrates, proteins, minerals in functional drinks on muscle recovery? How are they important on muscle recovery, as well as osmolarity? Since we're talking about recovery, they could talk about protein synthesis. This is in terms of muscle recovery and regeneration. Then still about muscle regeneration, so mitosis, DNA replication, because most cells need to be made in order to repair. So DNA replication, the significance of enzymes in muscle recovery, osmosis in the context of dehydration and rehydration, and how this affects cells. Talk about water retention in the gut when hypertonic drinks are consumed, and then hyponatremia, consuming hypertonic and hypotonic drinks in rehydration. So here about their pros and cons, how dehydration affects hormonal function, the significance of potassium, sodium, calcium ions on muscle recovery, because these ions are usually included in these drinks. How do nitrates improve blood flow to the muscles and the implication of that? Effects of high sodium ion concentration in accelerated biological aging of the heart as well as kidneys and the immune system. Why hypotonic drinks are better for hydration than hypertonics. Then effects of functional rehydration drinks on non-active individuals. When we go to aging, they could talk about muscle loss and dehydration. You remember we talked about the reservoirs. These reservoirs are lost. Then they can talk about excess water uptake or water loss during dehydration on cells, aging and effects of thirst reflexes, aging and urine concentration by the kidneys, age-related cognitive decline due to dehydration or due to something else, then age-related degeneration in critical organs like the heart, kidney, and the central nervous system. Of course, this is going to be due to cell death. Could be the cells of the nervous system, which are neurons, and then it could be cells within the organs as aging occurs. Then when we go to stimulants, they could ask about effects of stimulants like caffeine on the heart, involving the sinoatrial node, the cardiac cycle, sympathetic versus parasympathetic, and so many more. Then others, they talked about vomiting, diarrhea, and so on. So these and how are these connected to dehydration. So basically you could talk about osmosis, how water is lost from the body during diarrhea and how water is lost from the stomach during vomiting, and that all leads to the dehydration. Action potential generation, of course, we have exercise, we have activity, so muscles need to contract and the nervous system needs to stimulate that. They could also include neurodegenerative diseases because they talked about the effects on cognition, brain imaging techniques, again in reference to cognition decline, then imaging techniques for muscle loss. They could include osmosis, active transport diffusion, the kidney tubules, the nephron in water and ion reabsorption, the cell membrane or transport across cell membranes, and then homeostasis and negative feedback systems in iron and sugar concentration. So some of the questions that I think they can ask, if we begin with during exercise, they could ask, how does the sympathetic nervous system regulate heart rate during exercise? Here you could say the sympathetic nervous system plays a key role in increasing the heart rate and stroke volume to meet the oxygen demands of active muscles. It releases noradrenaline, which binds to receptors in the heart, stimulating the sinoatrial node and causing faster and stronger contractions. And this is going to enhance blood circulation, delivering oxygen and nutrients to tissues efficiently, so that, of course, aerobic respiration can take place. Then the second could be explain how adrenaline affects the heart during exercise. Remember, they talked about hormonal involvement. So you could say adrenaline secreted by the adrenal glands during exercise binds to receptors in the heart, increasing the rate and strength of the heart contractions. This hormonal response ensures higher cardiac output, allowing sufficient oxygen delivery and waste removal from active muscles, enabling sustained physical performance. Then they could ask describe the role of acetylcholine in impulse transmission at the neuromuscular junction. And again, this is connecting to exercise. Like we have to consider all topics talked about or mentioned in the article. You never know, they could bring questions about muscle contraction. So That's why I'm talking about this one. So I could answer and say at the neuromuscular junction, acetylcholine is released from the motor neuron into the synaptic cleft. It binds to the receptors on the muscle cell membrane, causing the sodium ions to enter the muscle fiber, depolarizing the membrane. And so this depolarization triggers an action potential that spreads across the muscle, leading to contraction. Then they could also ask, why is oxygen delivery crucial for muscles during exercise? Of course, you know this is for aerobic respiration, so I could say oxygen is essential for aerobic respiration, a process that generates ATP needed for muscle contraction. Without adequate oxygen, muscles rely on less efficient anaerobic respiration, which produces lactate and leads to fatigue. Continuous oxygen supply ensures sustained activity and delays muscle fatigue, meaning exercise or whatever activity can go on a little bit longer if we have sufficient oxygen. Then they could also ask, how do fast-twitch muscle fibers differ from slow-twitch muscle fibers? You could say fast-twitch muscle fibers generate rapid and powerful contractions but fatigue quickly as they rely on anaerobic respiration. The slow-twitch muscle fibers contract more slowly and are resistant to fatigue because they rely on aerobic respiration for sustained energy production, making them ideal for endurance activities. They could bring a question actually, compare, contrast, maybe structure and function, then you can answer appropriately. Explain the process of thermoregulation during exercise. Thermoregulation involves the mechanisms such as vasodilation, which increases the blood flow to the skin, allowing heat dissipation through radiation, and sweating, where evaporative cooling reduces body temperature. This helps to maintain core temperature despite heat generation during exercise. Then they could ask, how does sweating contribute to dehydration during exercise? Of course, there is going to be water loss, so you can say sweating is a cooling mechanism that involves the loss of water and electrolytes such as sodium and potassium through the skin. Excessive sweating without adequate fluid replacement leads to dehydration, impairing muscle function and thermoregulation. Then they could ask, what role does the hypothalamus play in maintaining water balance during exercise? You can say the hypothalamus monitors blood osmolarity through osmoreceptors. When osmolarity increases due to water loss, it triggers thirst and the release of ADH from the pituitary gland. ADH enhances water reabsorption in the kidneys, conserving water to maintain hydration. Then next they could ask, what is oxygen debt and how is it repaid after exercise? Oxygen debt occurs when oxygen supply during intense exercise is insufficient, causing muscles to switch to anaerobic respiration. Post-exercise, increased oxygen intake is required to metabolize lactate into pyruvate, replenishing ATP stores, and restore normal oxygen levels in myoglobin. Remember, myoglobin in the muscles. Then describe what occurs at the neuromuscular junction during muscle contraction. The neuromuscular junction facilitates communication between motor neurons and muscle fibers. Acetylcholine is released into the synaptic cleft, binding to receptors on the muscle membrane. So this is going to cause depolarization, and it triggers the release of calcium ions from the sarcoplasmic reticulum into the area where the contraction is going to be stimulated. Then how does ATP production support exercise? ATP is the primary energy currency for muscle contraction, active and transport, and maintaining homeostasis during exercise. Aerobic respiration generates large amounts of ATP efficiently, while anaerobic respiration provides quick energy for short bursts of intense activity. What is the impact of lactate accumulation during anaerobic respiration? Lactate accumulation lowers the muscle pH, leading to acidity and muscle fatigue. So this reduces the contractile efficiency and causes discomfort. After exercise, lactate is transported to the liver where it's converted into glucose. After exercise, more drinks are going to be consumed to rehydrate, but also the muscles need to recover. So the next questions are going to be focused on that. Number one, how do carbohydrates in functional drinks aid muscle recovery? The carbohydrates replenish glycogen stores in muscles and the liver, which are depleted during exercise. This restoration provides energy for recovery and prepares muscles for future activity, aiding in sustained performance. And what is the significance of proteins in muscle recovery? Proteins provide amino acids necessary for repairing damaged muscle fibers and promoting muscle growth through protein synthesis. This process enhances muscle strength and resilience after exercise. Then explain the role of mitosis in muscle repair post-exercise or post-activity. You can say mitosis allows muscle satellite cells to divide and replace damaged cells. These new cells integrate into muscle fibers, repairing tears caused by intense activity and aiding tissue regeneration. Then they could ask, how does dehydration affect cellular function during recovery? Dehydration causes cells to lose water through osmosis, leading to shrinkage and impaired function. Enzyme activity is going to slow down and metabolic processes will become less efficient. This is going to delay muscle repair as well as recovery. What are the benefits of consuming hypotonic drinks for rehydration? Hypotonic drinks have a lower solid concentration than blood. This allows rapid absorption into the bloodstream, and this helps restore hydration efficiently without causing gastrointestinal discomfort. Why can hypotonic drinks hinder rehydration? Hypotonic drinks have a high solid concentration, which draws water into the gut via osmosis. They could ask questions about osmosis as well, so this delays hydration and exacerbates dehydration and may lead to digestive discomfort. How do nitrates improve muscle recovery? Nitrates are converted into nitric oxide in the body, which relaxes blood vessels and increases blood flow to the muscles. So enhanced circulation improves oxygen and nutrient delivery, speeding up recovery. Why is the combination of sodium and potassium important in functional drinks? You could say sodium and potassium restore electrolyte balance, maintain osmotic gradients, and prevent muscle cramps. This supports efficient nerve and muscle function during recovery. Then what is the effect of high sodium levels on biological aging? Of course, as high sodium levels increase, cellular stress and inflammation is going to occur, accelerating aging in the heart, the kidneys, and the immune system by promoting oxidative stress and reducing cellular repair mechanisms. When we go to aging, how does aging affect muscle water reservoirs? Aging leads to decline in muscle mass, reducing the water reservoirs in muscle tissues. This increases susceptibility to dehydration, impacting muscle function and thermoregulation. What is the impact of aging on thirst reflexes? Aging reduces the sensitivity of osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus, diminishing the thirst reflex. So older adults are less likely to drink sufficient water, increasing their risk of dehydration. Because remember, it's the thirst reflexes that trigger you to feel thirsty so that you can drink water. So if those reflexes are not working well, then you are less likely to be triggered to take water, and so you'll be dehydrated. How does aging affect urine concentration by the kidneys? Aging reduces the kidneys' ability to concentrate urine, leading to increased water loss and a higher risk of dehydration even with adequate fluid intake. Then, why are older adults more susceptible to dehydration-related cognitive decline? You could say dehydration causes neural cell shrinkage and impaired signaling, exacerbating age-related cognitive decline and increasing the risk of conditions like dementia. Then we go to stimulants. They could ask, how does caffeine stimulate the heart? You could say caffeine binds receptors in the sinoatrial node, increasing heart rate and enhancing contractibility. This improves blood flow to tissues but may lead to arrhythmias if consumed in excess. They could ask, compare the effects of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system on the heart. Of course, the sympathetic system increases the heart rate as well as stroke volume, preparing the body for physical activity, but the parasympathetic system slows the heart rate, conserving energy and promoting relaxation. What is the role of the sinoatrial node in the cardiac cycle? The sinoatrial node generates electrical impulses that initiate heart contractions. It acts as a natural pacemaker, regulating the rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the heart chambers. So, questions from extra topics, like things that were talked about in the article. How do vomiting and diarrhea cause dehydration? Here you could say vomiting and diarrhea lead to significant loss of water and electrolytes from the body. Vomiting depletes fluids from the stomach, while diarrhea accelerates the expulsion of water and ions through the intestine. This disrupts osmotic balance, reducing blood volume and impacting cellular function. Explain the process of action potential generation in neurons. You could say an action potential begins when a stimulus causes sodium channels to open, allowing sodium ions to enter the neuron. This depolarizes the membrane, reaching a threshold that triggers a rapid influx of sodium. Potassium channels then open, allowing potassium to exit, repolarizing the membrane. The sodium-potassium pump restores the ion distribution to the resting state, or it restores the resting potential. Then how do neurodegenerative diseases affect hydration? Neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's impair the brain's ability to regulate thirst and kidney function. Damage to neuronal pathways disrupt signals from the hypothalamus, reducing fluid intake and increasing the risk of chronic dehydration. Then what is the role of osmosis in kidney water reabsorption? You could say osmosis drives water from the filtrate in the nephron back into the bloodstream. This occurs in regions like the proximal convoluted tubule and the loop of Henle, where solid gradients draw water across impermeable membranes, conserving body fluids. Next, how do nephrons regulate ion and water reabsorption? We could say nephrons actively transport ions like sodium and potassium back into the bloodstream, maintaining electrolyte balance. Water follows these ions via osmosis, ensuring hydration and stable blood pressure. Next, how do hypertonic drinks affect cells during hydration? You can say hypertonic drinks have a higher solute concentration than body fluids, causing water to move out of the cells into the bloodstream by osmosis. This can dehydrate cells, impairing their function and exacerbating thirst. Then why is negative feedback important in homeostasis? You could say negative feedback mechanisms detect deviations from normal physiological state and trigger correlation actions. For example, higher osmolarity stimulates ADH release, promoting water retention, while low blood sugar triggers glucagon release to increase glucose levels. Now, because the article talked about degeneration, so I thought they could ask about imaging techniques. And again, this is a long shot, but I included that. What imaging techniques are used to detect muscle loss? We could use MRI as well as CT scans. These are effective for assessing muscle loss. MRIs provide detailed images of muscle structure, while CT scans quantify muscle mass, detecting atrophy due to aging or inactivity. How does the cell membrane regulate water and ion transport? The cell membrane contains proteins, of course these are channel proteins, as well as pumps that control ion and water movement. These facilitate water transport, while sodium-potassium pumps maintain ion gradients essential for cell function. What is the role of active transport in kidney function? We've already talked about this. Active transport in the kidneys reabsorbs ions like sodium as well as glucose against their concentration gradient, and this process occurs in nephron tubules using ATP to maintain electrolyte balance and fluid homeostasis. How does dehydration affect enzyme function? Dehydration reduces cellular water content, altering enzyme conformation and activity, and this slows metabolic reactions, affecting processes like energy production and protein synthesis. What is the role of diffusion in oxygen transport during exercise? Oxygen diffuses from the alveoli in the lungs into the blood and from capillaries into the muscle cells following a concentration gradient. This supports aerobic respiration, ensuring sustained ATP production. How does water loss affect muscle function? Water loss reduces muscle elasticity as well as strength, increasing susceptibility to cramps, and impairs the ability to perform sustained contractions, hindering overall physical performance. Why are functional drinks less effective for non-active individuals? Non-active individuals do not require the additional electrolytes, carbohydrates, or calories in these functional drinks, so excess consumption can lead to weight gain as well as metabolic imbalances. What is the impact of potassium deficiency during recovery? Potassium deficiency disrupts ion gradients, leading to muscle cramps, weakness, and slowed recovery. Potassium is vital for nerve impulses and muscle contraction. Why is ATP critical for active transport during recovery? ATP provides energy for ion pumps in cell membranes, restoring ion gradients and osmotic balance in cells after exercise, and this is going to facilitate the recovery process. What are the effects of high blood osmolarity during dehydration? High osmolarity triggers the hypothalamus to release ADH, increasing water reabsorption in the kidneys, and this helps concentrate urine and conserve body fluids to counteract dehydration. How do functional drinks enhance recovery for athletes? Functional drinks replenish glycogen with carbohydrates, repair muscle fibers with proteins, and restore electrolyte balance with sodium and potassium. You could also include calcium and so on. This optimizes recovery and prepares athletes for subsequent activity. Why is maintaining electrolyte balance crucial for exercise? Electrolyte balance ensures proper nerve impulse, muscle contraction, and hydration levels. If there are imbalances, these can lead to cramps, fatigue, impaired recovery, making post-exercise replenishment essential. So this brings us to the end of all the questions, as well as the discussion about the article. Thank you for being with us. Do not forget to subscribe. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.